The ships came without warning. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Endurance, humanity's largest warship, and watched the sky turn dark. Massive alien vessels blocked the sun. Each one was bigger than anything humans had ever built. There were hundreds of them. "How many?" asked. His voice was calm, but his hands gripped the railing tight. Commander looked up from her screens. Her face was pale. 412 ships, sir. The smallest one is 5 times larger than us. Nodded slowly. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 30 years. He had trained for first contact his whole career, but nothing could prepare anyone for this. The alien ships were beautiful in a terrible way. They were silver and gold, covered in strange symbols that glowed with blue light. They moved through space like predators, slow and confident. They knew they had nothing to fear. "We are receiving a transmission," said. "Put it through." The main screen flickered. An alien face appeared. The creature was tall and thin, with skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. It wore golden armor covered in jewels. When it spoke, its voice was translated by the ship's computer. "Primitive creatures of Earth," the alien said. "I am High Commander of the Empire. We have watched your species for some time. You are weak, simple, and young. Your technology is laughable. Your weapons are toys." Said nothing, he just listened. "The Empire has ruled this sector of the galaxy for 10,000 years, continued. "Every species we have encountered has served us. You will be no different. In 7 of your days you will surrender your planet. Your people will become slaves of the Empire. Those who resist will die. Those who obey will live." The alien leaned forward, its 4 eyes narrowed. "Do not be foolish. We have destroyed species far greater than yours. Your extinction would mean nothing to us. It would be less than nothing. You are insects. Accept your place and you may survive." The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. Every officer stared at the blank screen. Some looked scared. Some looked angry. Hands were shaking, but she clenched them into fists to make them stop. "Sir," she said quietly, "what do we do?" Turned to look at Earth through the observation window. The blue planet floated peacefully in space, unaware that its future had just been decided by creatures from across the stars. "We fight," he said. Shook her head. "Sir, I've calculated our odds. If we engage them directly, we have less than 3% chance of survival. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours, maybe thousands of years." "I know." "Then how can we fight?" Smiled, but there was no joy in it. "Commander, do you know what makes humans different from other species?" "No, sir." "We have been dying since the day we were born. Ice ages nearly killed us. Plagues nearly killed us. We fought world wars against ourselves that could have ended everything. Climate change almost destroyed our planet. Every generation of humans has faced extinction." He turned to face her. "And every generation has survived. We are very good at not dying." On Earth, the news spread fast. Within hours, every person on the planet knew that aliens existed and that those aliens wanted to enslave humanity. Panic came first. People screamed and cried and ran through the streets. Some thought it was the end of the world. But then something strange happened. President addressed the United Nations. He was a small man with hair and tired eyes. He had spent his career fighting political battles, negotiating with enemies, and trying to keep peace between nations that hated each other. Now, none of that mattered. "My friends," he said, "for thousands of years we have fought each other. We have killed each other over land, over resources, over ideas. We have hated each other because of the color of our skin, or the gods we worship, or the borders we were born inside." He paused and looked around the room. "Today that ends. Today we are not Korean or American or Chinese or Russian. We are not Christian or Muslim or Buddhist or atheist. We are human, and humanity will not kneel." The room erupted in applause. It spread across the world. In every country, on every continent, people stopped fighting each other. Old enemies shook hands. Resources that had been hoarded were shared freely. Scientists who had worked in secret shared their discoveries openly. Weapons factories ran day and night. Shipyards built new vessels as fast as possible. Every engineer, every soldier, every scientist worked together with a single purpose. The watch from orbit, they were amused. "Look at them," said to his officers. "They scurry like insects. Do they truly believe they can resist us?" "They are young and foolish," another replied. "They do not understand their place in the galaxy." "Let them have their 7 days," said. "Let them build their little ships and train their little soldiers. When the time comes, we will crush them so completely that no species in the galaxy will ever think of resisting us again." But did not understand humans. None of them did. On the 6th day, Admiral met with his commanders. They had built 200 new ships in less than a week. They were small and poorly armed compared to vessels, but they were ready. "They expect us to surrender," said. "They expect us to beg for mercy. They have conquered hundreds of species, and every single one gave up when they saw the fleet." He looked at the men and women around him. They were scared. Of course they were scared, but they were also determined. "We will not surrender," continued. "We will not beg. When they come for us, we will meet them with everything we have. We may lose. We probably will lose, but we will make them bleed. We will make them remember that humanity did not go quietly into the dark." Commander stepped forward. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Smiled grimly. "On the 8th day we attack first. We show them what humans are made of." The room was silent for a moment. Then, one by one, every commander saluted. The 7th day passed. On the 8th day, humanity went to war. They expected Earth to burn in hours. They were wrong. On the morning of the 8th day, before the alien fleet could begin its attack, 200 human ships launched from orbit. They were small and fast, built for speed instead of power. They laughed when they saw them coming. "Foolish creatures," High Commander said. "They attack us with those tiny vessels." His officers laughed with him. The human ships looked like toys compared to the massive dreadnoughts. One destroyer could crush 20 of them without effort. But the humans did not fight like they expected. Captain led the first wave. She was 32 years old, small and thin, with sharp eyes and steady hands. Before the war, she had been a test pilot, flying experimental aircraft that most people were too scared to touch. She had crashed 11 times and survived every crash. Her crew called her the Ghost because she refused to die. "All ships follow my lead," said into her radio. "We're going straight through their formation. Do not stop. Do not slow down. Hit them and keep moving." Her fighters screamed through space at impossible speeds. The ships tried to target them, but human vessels were too small and too fast. They slipped between the massive dreadnoughts like fish swimming through rocks. Aimed her ship at a destroyer. Her weapons were weak compared to alien technology, but she knew something that did not. She knew where to hit them. "Targeting their engine core," she announced. "All ships focus fire on engine sections. Their shields are weakest there." 20 human fighters concentrated their weapons on a single point. The destroyer's shields flickered and failed. The ship exploded in a ball of fire. They stopped laughing. "Impossible," whispered. "How did they know?" What did not know was that humans had been studying technology since the first day of contact. Doctor, a brilliant scientist who specialized in alien biology and technology, had analyzed every signal, every scan, every piece of data they could gather. She had found the weakness in the ships. She had given humanity a chance. The battle raged for 16 hours. Humanity lost 80 ships, but they destroyed 12 vessels, including 3 destroyers. Captain survived, though her ship was badly damaged. When she returned to Earth, she was greeted as a hero. People chanted her name in the streets, but felt no joy. She had lost good friends in that battle. She knew the war was just beginning. On the ground, things were harder. The landed troops on 3 continents. They expected humans to run. Instead, humans fought back from every shadow, every building, every hole in the ground. General Minyu led the resistance in Asia. He was an old soldier, 63 years old, with white hair and a body covered in scars from wars he had fought decades ago. He had retired 5 years before the aliens came. Now, he was back in uniform. "We cannot beat them in open battle," Minyu told his soldiers. "Their weapons are too powerful, their armor too strong, but we can hurt them. We can make them afraid to sleep. We can make them pay for every step they take on our soil." His soldiers attacked at night. They planted bombs on roads. They ambushed alien patrols and disappeared before reinforcements arrived. They turned every city into a death trap. They were confused. In 10,000 years of conquest, they had never faced an enemy like this. Other species surrendered after their capitals fell. Other species begged for mercy when their armies were destroyed. Humans did neither. "Why do they keep fighting?" a commander asked. "We have destroyed their military bases. We occupy their cities. They cannot win." "They are animals," replied. "They do not understand logic. Keep killing them until none remain." But no matter how many humans they killed, more appeared. Farmers picked up weapons and became soldiers. Teachers and doctors learned to build explosives. Children carried messages between resistant cells, sneaking through streets they thought they controlled. Meanwhile, Doctor made a discovery that would change everything. She was studying captured equipment when she noticed something strange. The aliens had slaves. 3 species served the Empire, creatures called the, and the. They worked as laborers, mechanics, and servants. They treated them like property. Observed these slaves whenever she could. She noticed that they whispered to each other when their masters were not watching. She saw fear in their eyes, but also something else: hope. One night she managed to speak with a slave. The creature was massive, 3 meters tall, with blue skin and gentle eyes. Its name was, and it had served them for 200 years. "Why do you serve them?" asked. Looked around carefully. "We have no choice. They conquered our world 5,000 years ago. We have forgotten how to be free." "But you want to be free." The eyes filled with tears. "More than anything, there is a prophecy among the slave species. It says that one day a young race will rise up and break our chains. Many have hoped. All have been disappointed." Felt her heart beating fast. "What if I told you that humans will never stop fighting? What if I told you that we would rather die than be slaves?" Stared at her for a long moment. "Then perhaps," the whispered, "the prophecy is true." Returned to Admiral with her discovery. She told him about the slave species and their whispered hope. She told him that humanity was not alone. "We've been thinking about this war wrong," she said. "We don't just need to beat we need to give hope to everyone they've conquered. We need to start a revolution." Listened carefully. The war had been brutal. Humanity had survived 2 years of fighting, but the cost was terrible. Millions were dead. Cities were destroyed. They could not keep fighting alone forever. "Can it work?" he asked. "I don't know," admitted. "But we have to try. They have ruled through fear for 10,000 years. If we can show the galaxy that they can be beaten, everything changes." Nodded slowly. "Then we don't just fight for humanity, we fight for everyone." The plan was set. Humanity would not just survive. Humanity would spark a rebellion that would spread across the stars. They had no idea what was coming. 2 years into the war, humanity was bleeding but alive. They had expected victory in days. Instead, they had spent 2 years fighting an enemy that refused to surrender. They had lost ships, soldiers, and something more important, their reputation. Across the galaxy, slave species whispered about the humans who would not kneel. Ambassador was not a soldier. He was a diplomat, a man who had spent his life talking instead of fighting. He was small and quiet, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Most people underestimated him. That was his greatest weapon. "You want me to go to Prime?" asked when Admiral explained the mission. "Yes," replied. "They are the oldest slave species in the Empire. If we can convince them to rise up, others will follow. They will kill me if they find me." "Probably." Smiled, "Then I should pack light." He traveled in a small ship, disguised as a cargo vessel carrying supplies. It took 3 months to reach Prime, hiding from patrols, bribing corrupt officials, and sneaking through enemy space. Prime was a beautiful world of blue forests and silver lakes. Once, there had been artists and philosophers. Now, they worked in mines and factories, their spirits broken by 5,000 years of slavery. Found the leaders in secret. They met in underground caves away from eyes. There were massive creatures, 3 times the size of humans, but they moved like frightened children. "You come from the fighting species," their elder said. "His name was, and he was over 500 years old. We have heard stories. They say you attack ships without fear. They say you die rather than surrender." "The stories are true," said. "Why do you come here?" "We are slaves. We have been slaves since before your species existed. We do not know how to fight." Sat down on the cave floor, making himself small. They watched him with curious eyes. 5,000 years ago," began, "my species lived in caves much like this one. We were weak and afraid. Predators hunted us. The world was cold and dark. We should have died." "But you survived," said. "We did more than survive. We learned, we grew. We built cities and ships and weapons, not because we were strong but because we refused to accept our weakness." Looked up at the massive surrounding him. "You have forgotten who you were before they came, but that memory is still inside you. I am here to help you remember." For 3 months, lived among the. He taught them about human history, about the wars they had fought against each other, and the times they had united against common enemies. He taught them about resistance, about hope, about the power of refusing to give up. They began to change. They stood taller, they spoke louder, they looked at their masters with new eyes. Meanwhile, on Earth, a young engineer named was working on a device that could change everything. Was 26 years old, brilliant and stubborn. She had grown up during the war, watching her city burn while ships filled the sky. She had lost her parents in the first year of fighting. Instead of breaking her, the tragedy had made her stronger. "They control their slaves with these," she explained to Admiral, holding up a small metal collar. "Every slave wears one. If they disobey, the collar delivers pain. If they try to remove it, they die." "Can you disable them?" Smiled. "I can do better than that. I've been working with a scientist named Sora. She escaped from a ship and offered to help us." Sora was small and delicate, with purple skin and 3-fingered hands. She had been a technician in the fleet before she defected. She knew their technology better than anyone. "The collars all work on the same frequency," Sora explained. "If we can broadcast a signal on that frequency, we can disable every collar on an entire planet at once." His eyes widened. "Every collar at the same time?" "Yes, the slaves would be free before they could react." Building the device took 6 months, and Sora worked day and night, solving problems that seemed impossible. When they finally finished, they had a machine the size of a small room, capable of broadcasting a signal across an entire planet. They chose IV for the first test. They were smaller than humans, with green skin and 4 arms. They had been slaves for 3,000 years. Their planet was an industrial world, filled with factories that built weapons for the war machine. Captain, now a fleet commander, led the assault. 50 human ships jumped into the system without warning. While forces scrambled to respond, a transport ship landed on the planet's surface. Activated the device. Across IV, 10 million collars shut down simultaneously. For the first time in 3,000 years, they were free. They tried to restore order, but it was too late. They had been waiting for this moment. They attacked their masters with tools, with rocks, with their bare hands. Human soldiers landed to support them, fighting alongside aliens they had never met. The Battle of IV lasted 3 days. When it ended, the planet was free. News of the victory spread across the galaxy like fire. On Prime, ambassadors stood before thousands of who had gathered in secret. "You saw what happened on IV," he said. "They can be beaten. Their slaves can be freed. The time has come to choose. Will you live as slaves forever, or will you fight?" Elder stepped forward. His voice was strong for the first time in centuries. "We will fight." The rebellion had begun. Within months, uprisings erupted on a dozen worlds. The joined. Species that had been slaves for thousands of years remembered what it meant to be free. The Emperor watched his empire begin to crumble. He had conquered 100 species. He had ruled for 10,000 years. And now, because of one small, stubborn species from an unremarkable planet, everything was falling apart. "Destroy them," he ordered. "Destroy Earth. Destroy every human in the galaxy. Burn their world until nothing remains." He gathered every ship in the Empire. The largest fleet in galactic history prepared to march on Earth. But the humans were not alone anymore. And they were not afraid. The war entered its 5th year, and the galaxy had never seen anything like it. What had started as humanity's desperate fight for survival had grown into something larger. 7 species now stood together against the Empire. Shipyards floated in space where humans and worked side by side. Soldiers from different worlds trained together, fought together, and died together. They called themselves the Galactic Liberation Alliance. Fleet Admiral stood on the bridge of the Unity, the largest ship ever built by free species. She was 51 years old, with streaks in her black hair and scars on her face from battles she had survived. Before the war, she had been a cargo ship captain. Now, she commanded a fleet of 3,000 vessels from 7 different species. "Status report," she said. Her first officer, a named, checked his screens. The massive blue alien had been a slave until 2 years ago. Now, he was one of the best tactical officers in the Alliance. "All ships are in position," said. "The fleet is approaching the Meridian system. They'll arrive in 6 hours." Nodded. The Meridian Collective had just declared independence from the Empire. They were a peaceful species, scientists and artists who had never fought a war. They were coming to make an example of them. "We won't let that happen," said quietly. The Alliance had come far since the first days of the rebellion. After IV was freed, other species began to hope. They rose up on 3 worlds. The, inspired by ambassadors' teachings, started a guerrilla war on there. Even species that had never been conquered by them began to pay attention. The clans were the first free species to join the Alliance. They were fierce warriors who lived on volcanic worlds, and they had feared them for centuries. When they saw humans fighting beside former slaves, they decided that fear was no longer an option. "If these small, pink creatures can stand against the Empire," their clan chief had said, "then we will stand with them." The Deep Void Wanderers came next. They were ancient beings who lived in the empty spaces between stars. They rarely spoke to other species, but they watched everything. When they saw the Alliance fighting for freedom, they offered their help. Building the Alliance had not been easy. A diplomat who had spent his life studying conflict resolution led the effort to create a government that represented all species equally. "They want more voting power," one of his aides complained during a particularly difficult meeting. "They think the military decisions favor humans. They are upset about resource distribution." Rubbed his tired eyes. "What do the clans want?" "They want everyone to stop complaining and fight." "Finally, something I can agree with." The Alliance Council met every week. It was chaotic. Species argued constantly. Cultural misunderstandings caused daily problems. They considered eye contact rude, while they considered it essential for honest communication. The negotiated through complex gift-giving rituals that confused everyone else. But somehow it worked. Often wondered why. One night he asked Admiral, who had become one of his closest friends. "How are we holding this together?" said. "We have 7 species with different languages, different cultures, different ways of thinking. We should have fallen apart months ago." Smiled. "Humans have spent our entire history learning to work with people different from ourselves. We've had thousands of years of practice. Different nations, different religions, different ways of life. We've fought and made peace more times than anyone can count. But we still fight each other." "Yes, and then we stop fighting and find ways to live together. That's what we're teaching the galaxy, not how to be perfect, but how to be imperfect together." The Battle of Meridian was the first time the full Alliance fleet fought as one. 3,000 ships faced 5,000 vessels. They were confident. They had the numbers. They had the technology. They had 10,000 years of victory behind them. Admiral gave her orders calmly. "All ships form up according to plan. Heavy cruisers take the center. Strike wings, prepare for flanking maneuvers. Human and ships protect the carriers." The battle began at dawn over Meridian Prime. They attacked in their usual formation, expecting the Alliance to crumble as other species always had. Instead, they met a coordinated defense that adapted to every move they made. Ships absorbed damage that would have destroyed human vessels. Their massive frames were built for endurance, and they held the line while others attacked. Behind them, fighters swarmed through the formation. They were small and fast, with 4 arms that could operate their ship controls with incredible speed. Human ships targeted weak points, using the knowledge they had gathered over 5 years of war. Engineers worked frantically to repair damaged vessels, keeping ships in the fight that should have been destroyed. And the Deep Void Wanderers did something no one expected. They reached out with their minds, touching every Alliance soldier at once, not controlling but connecting. For one moment, every fighter in the fleet understood their allies perfectly. Language barriers disappeared. Cultural confusion faded. They moved as one. They had never faced an enemy like this. They fell back, confused and frightened. When the battle ended, they had lost a third of their fleet. The Alliance celebrated, but Admiral knew the war was not over. "They'll come back stronger," she said to her officers. "The Emperor will not accept defeat. He'll throw everything he has at us." She was right. The Emperor looked at the reports from Meridian with cold fury. He was ancient, over 2,000 years old, kept alive by technology that most species could not imagine. He had built the empire from nothing. He had crushed every enemy he had ever faced. "These humans," he said slowly, "they have united the galaxy against us." His advisors waited in terrified silence. "Very well," the Emperor continued. "If the galaxy wishes to stand together, then I will burn it together. Gather every ship in the Empire. We will destroy them at their source. We will turn Earth into ash and make an example that the universe will never forget." The largest fleet in galactic history began to assemble. 20,000 ships, carrying weapons that could crack planets. They would march on Earth and end the rebellion once and for all. The Alliance had 6 months to prepare. It would not be enough. Everyone knew it would not be enough. But they prepared anyway, because humans had taught them something important. Sometimes you fight even when you cannot win. Sometimes you fight simply because it is right. The final battle began at dawn over Prime. 12 species had come. 15,000 ships darkened the stars above the heart of the Empire. It was the largest fleet ever assembled by free peoples, and it still was not enough. They had 20,000 ships defending there, including weapons that could shatter moons. Admiral, now old and from years of war, stood on the bridge of the Endurance. The ship had been rebuilt 3 times since the first battle. It carried the memories of 1,000 fallen soldiers. "This is it," he said to the commanders gathered around him. There were faces from every species in the Alliance, and human, warriors and deep void wanderers. All of them looked tired, all of them looked determined. Many of us will not survive today, continued. The fight for their empire, we fight for something greater. We fight for every species that has ever been chained. We fight for every child who deserves to grow up free. Today, we end this. The fleet moved forward. The battle was brutal from the first moment. Dreadnoughts unleashed weapons that tore through Alliance ships. The Freedom's Light, a carrier, was destroyed in the first hour, taking 3,000 soldiers with it. Admiral, who had once been a young commander calculating odds of survival, led the assault on the orbital defense platforms. Her fleet of 800 ships faced 2,000 defenders. "All ships follow my lead," she ordered. Her voice was steady despite the chaos around her. "We break through or we die trying." Her flagship, the Morning Star, charged directly at the largest platform. Weapons hit her ship again and again. Fires spread through the corridors. Crew members died at their stations, but did not stop. "Almost there," she whispered, "almost there." The Morning Star crashed into the platform's power core and exploded. The platform collapsed, creating a gap in the defenses. Its last transmission echoed across the fleet. "The path is open, don't waste it." Her sacrifice inspired the entire Alliance. Ships poured through the gap she had created. The lines began to break. On the surface of Prime, the ground assault had begun. Fleet Commander led 10,000 soldiers from 7 species. They landed in drop pods and assault ships, crashing through the atmosphere while defenses tried to shoot them down. Hit the ground running. She was 53 years old now, too old for combat, but she refused to command from orbit. "I started this war on the front lines," she had said. "I'll finish it there too." Around her, humans fought beside warriors. Snipers covered engineers who worked to disable defenses. The clans charged into battle with flames dancing on their skin, terrifying enemies who had never faced them before. They pushed toward the Imperial Palace, where the Emperor waited with his personal guard. The palace was massive, built from gold and crystal, a monument to 10,000 years of conquest. Bodies of slaves had been buried in its foundations. Treasures stolen from 100 worlds filled its halls. Looked at it with cold eyes, tear it down. The assault on the palace lasted 3 hours. Every corridor was defended. Every room was a death trap. Alliance soldiers fell by the hundreds, but they kept pushing forward. Finally, they reached the throne room. The Emperor sat on a throne made from the bones of conquered kings. He was ancient and terrible, his skin stretched thin over his skull, his 4 eyes burning with hatred. "You think you have won," he said. His voice was calm, almost amused. "You have achieved nothing." He raised a hand, and a holographic display appeared, showing a device deep beneath the planet's surface. "This is the heart of," the Emperor said, "a weapon capable of destroying all life on this world. Every slave, every soldier, every traitor who has dared to stand against me. If I cannot have the galaxy, no one will." His heart sank. They had come so far, lost so many, and now the Emperor would kill everyone rather than accept defeat. But then a voice spoke from behind the Emperor. "No." Doctor stepped out of the shadows. She was old now, 76 years old, but her eyes were sharp. She had spent the entire war studying technology and biology. She understood them better than they understood themselves. "Your weapon won't work," she said. "Impossible," the Emperor snarled. "The heart of cannot be stopped." "I'm not stopping it. I'm redirecting it," held up a small device. "This broadcasts a signal on a very specific frequency, the same frequency that your ancestors used for something very different 10,000 years ago." The Emperor's eyes widened. For the first time he looked afraid. "You see," continued, "I've studied your history, not the propaganda you teach your people, but the truth. Before you were conquerors, you were explorers. Before you enslaved other species, you welcomed them. Your ancestors buried a message in your genetic code, a memory of who you were supposed to be. She activated the device. Across Prime, every stopped moving. The signal touched something deep inside them, something that had been sleeping for 10,000 years. They remembered. They remembered a time when they had looked at the stars with wonder instead of hunger, when they had met other species with curiosity instead of contempt, when they had built instead of destroyed. The Emperor fell to his knees, tears streamed from his 4 eyes. "What have we done?" he whispered. "What have we become?" The weapon was deactivated, not by force but by shame. The war was over. 100 years later, the Galactic Council met on Unity Station, built where Earth's moon once orbited. 23 species sat as equals around a circular table. The reformed and humbled had their own seat. Their new culture, built on the ashes of empire, had become one of the strongest advocates for peace. Elder addressed the council. She was 147 years old, the last surviving veteran of the first battle against the medical technology from grateful species had kept her alive far beyond a normal human. She walked slowly to the center of the chamber, her body frail but her spirit strong. "I remember the day they came," she said. "I was a young officer on the bridge of the Endurance. I watched their ships block out the sun. I calculated that we had no chance of survival." She smiled. "I was wrong." Looked around at the representatives of 23 species, and Meridian and Deep Void. "And yes, they thought we would fall," she said. "Every species before us had fallen. They gave up when they saw the fleet. They surrendered when their cities burned. They accepted slavery because they believed they had no choice." She straightened her back, standing as tall as her old body would allow. "But we are human. We do not accept defeat. We do not surrender when things seem hopeless. And most importantly, we do not fight alone. When the galaxy was enslaved, we reached out our hands. We said, 'Join us. Stand with us. Together we are stronger.'" Tears formed in her eyes, but she did not stop speaking. Today, 23 species sit in this room, not as conquerors and slaves, but as equals. Not because we forced them, but because they chose to be here. We did not just save humanity, we saved everyone, and we did it together. The chamber erupted in applause. Each species had their own way of showing appreciation. The stomped their feet, the clicked their fingers, the hummed a beautiful harmony, even the bowed their heads in respect. Elder smiled at the sound. The galaxy was united, not by conquest, not by fear, by choice. Because one small, stubborn species from an unremarkable planet had showed them all what it meant to never give up. What it meant to fight not just for yourself, but for everyone. Humanity had looked at the stars and refused to be afraid. And in doing so, they had changed everything. The stars would remember.